There is a moment, a very specific kind of moment, where someone looks at you and decides, in the space of a breath, that you don't belong. Not because of anything you've done, not because of anything you've done, not because of anything you've said, but because of what they see. And in that moment, everything you've built, every decision, every sacrifice, every 3 a.m. when you kept going anyway, none of it exists to them. You are just a problem to be managed. That was the moment a security officer chose at a boarding gate somewhere in this country when he looked at a well-dressed black man and decided he wasn't getting on that plane. He was calm about it, almost polite. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside." The man complied. The officer felt powerful. And somewhere in a boardroom database, a single name sat attached to 60% of the airline's total stock. The officer didn't know that name, but he was about to. Let me tell you about Elias. Elias didn't grow up with money. He grew up with hunger, the real kind and the metaphorical kind. The kind that makes you look at a world that was not built for you and decide, quietly and with great fury, that you are going to build your own. He was the kid who read everything he could find, who asked questions that made teachers uncomfortable, who saw systems, financial systems, business systems, power structures, not as fixed, permanent things, but as constructions, made by people, which meant they could be entered by people, even people like him. He started small, side income, investments, the kind of money that doesn't impress anyone at a dinner party, but compounds quietly in the background while you sleep. He learned the language of markets the same way immigrants learn a new country's language, not casually, but out of necessity, because there was no fallback, no inheritance waiting, no family safety net, just the math, and the discipline to trust it. Years passed, the numbers grew, and then one day, after decades of decisions that most people never see and almost nobody celebrates, Elias owned something that would have seemed like fiction to the boy he used to be. He held a majority stake in a commercial airline. Not a seat at the table, not a minority share, not a symbolic position. 60%. He was, by every legal and financial definition of the word, the person that airline answered to. But he didn't walk around announcing it. He didn't need to. The numbers spoke for themselves, to anyone paying attention. He arrived at the airport the way he always did. No entourage, no assistant walking 3 steps behind, no visible markers of what he was worth. Just a man with a carry-on, a boarding pass, and somewhere he needed to be. And that ordinariness is what made what happened next possible. Because the officer at the gate didn't see a billionaire. He saw a black man, and in his mind, shaped by whatever it was that shaped it, that meant something. Something that required intervention. Something that warranted a second look, that became a third look, that became a hand raised, palm out. "Sir, step aside." The stated reason would shift a few times. First, it was something about the boarding pass, then the ID, then a vague reference to protocol. The kind of shapeless explanations that are designed not to explain anything at all, designed, instead, to make you feel like you're the problem for asking. Elias had been here before. Not at this airport, not with this officer, but in this moment. This particular flavor of being treated like a disruption in a space you have every right to occupy. He knew the calculus. You argue, you escalate. You escalate, you miss your flight and possibly leave in handcuffs. You stay calm, maybe you get through. Maybe you don't, but at least you go home. So he stepped aside. He watched other passengers file past him, some avoiding eye contact, some stealing glances. One woman, he'd remember her, giving him a look that said, "I see what's happening and I'm sorry." The officer spoke into his radio, asked for confirmation on something. There was a pause, and then another pause, and then the kind of silence that, if you've ever watched a situation shift in real time, you recognize immediately. Something had changed. Here's what was happening on the other end of that radio. When the officer flagged the boarding pass for review, a routine escalation that goes to a supervisor who checks the passenger manifest, someone up the chain ran the name, and the name came back flagged. Not flagged the way a threat gets flagged the way a VIP gets flagged. The kind of flag that makes a supervisor sit up straighter. That makes someone reach for a phone instead of a walkie-talkie. That triggers a very specific kind of quiet panic that spreads through an organization when it realizes it has just made a very, very expensive mistake. Because the man standing at that gate, the man who had been told to step aside, was not just a passenger. He was the majority shareholder. He owned 60% of the airline's stock. He was, in the most literal sense, the reason that gate existed, the reason those uniforms existed, the reason that officer had a job. The supervisor called the gate directly. We don't know exactly what was said, but we know the tone, because we can imagine it. The tight, controlled voice of someone trying to fix something that cannot be unfixed, only managed. The officer at the gate received the call. His face changed. And Elias, who had been standing to the side, carry on at his feet, watching the whole performance with the patience of a man who has been patient his entire life, was suddenly being approached very differently. "Sir, I apologize for the confusion." Confusion, that word. As if confusion was what had happened here. Elias boarded the plane. He found his seat, not first class because that would be the wrong detail to focus on, just his seat. The seat he had paid for on the airline he owned. And I want you to think about what he must have felt in that moment. Not triumphant. I don't think it was triumphant. I think it was something more complicated than that. Something that people who have never lived inside a black body in this country may struggle to fully understand. Because the victory didn't erase the stop. It didn't reach back in time and undo the hand raised, palm out. It didn't take back the stares of the other passengers. It didn't erase the moment where his accomplishments, his degrees, his wealth, his entire life's work, none of it counted, because none of it was visible. What was visible was his skin, and that was enough to make someone decide he didn't belong somewhere he literally owned. This is not a story about karma, though karma is certainly present. This is a story about the gap between what a person is and what the world sees when it looks at them, and how black men and women have been navigating that gap exhaustingly, constantly, often invisibly, their entire lives. Elias had the resources to be seen eventually, but how many people don't? How many times does the story end at the gate? How many people are turned away from jobs, from opportunities, from rooms they had every right to enter, and the world never knows their name, never knows what they could have done, because they never got the chance to do it? That is the question this story is asking, underneath all the irony. Not, "Isn't it wild that he owned the airline?" But, "What does it say about us that he had to own the airline to be treated like a human being?" I've been sitting with this story for a while, and I keep coming back to one image. A man, standing to the side of a boarding gate, carry-on at his feet, watching other people walk past him onto a plane he built. Not raging, not pleading, not even visibly hurt, just waiting. Because he'd learned, the way so many people learn, that the loudest thing you can sometimes do is outlast the moment someone underestimates you. Elias got on that plane, and whatever happened next, whatever meeting he flew to, whatever decision he made, whatever he did with the weight of what had just happened to him, he carried it with him. The way black people in this country carry so many things, quietly, across the whole distance. If you've ever been made to feel like you didn't belong somewhere you had every right to be, I see you. And if you've ever been the one doing the not seeing, I hope this story stays with you. Because dignity isn't something that gets unlocked by a net worth. It should have been there from the beginning. Drop a comment. Tell me, have you ever been in a moment where someone completely misjudged who you were? Where they wrote the ending before the story even started? I want to hear it. And if this one hit you, share it. Not for the irony, for the question it leaves behind. Subscribe if you're new here, hit the bell, and I'll see you in the next one.